Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Funnel Trade. I've had this problem for a long time where I see these other channels and they talk about antiques and collectibles and other kind of hobby items and they claim that, Pokemon prices can't be sustained. That the kind of gains that we see every time we do another 6-month update video are not how markets are meant to work, and how this is just not how antiques and collectibles go, and thus Pokemon must crash and burn at some point. Though 6-month check after 6-month check after 6-month check, it still doesn't happen. And I've tried to understand what is the quality of sealed Pokemon boxes that makes it different than other antiques and collectibles. Because if we could identify what that quality is that's different, then we could say, no, the reason that we keep seeing 20, 30, 40% compound annual growth rate returns on sealed Pokemon boxes for over a decade is because of that quality. We could have a better argument for why. And then we could try to dissect, is that rational? Will that continue? How will prices moderate? We could go from there on the discussion. And keep in mind, this has everything to do with long-term prices. This is not anything to do with, arguments over short-term markets and flippers and anything like that. But this is the long-term question, and as it compares to other collectibles and antiques and things like that. And I had set forth a theory maybe 6 or 9 months ago, and I did it on the whiteboard. And basically, it was a theory based off of network topography. And what I argued was that in the case of, and the examples I used were stamps and coins, stamp and coin network topography, meaning the ecosystem of collectors and dealers and mints and printers and things like that, was vastly different than it was for TCGs. And that because of that difference in network topography between the two was the quality that leads you to have Pokemon boxes going 20, 30, 40% compound annual growth rate returns for years and years and years on end, where stamps and coins, for the most part, don't do that, absent rare exceptions. And I got some really good feedback on that video. I'd say most people disagreed with that explanation. And so I went back to the drawing board and I thought more for about, 6 more months. And I'm going to offer another theory today. And again, this is not the kind of thing where I'm pounding the table and I'm saying this is the reason. I'm going to lay out the theory as it's been kicking around in my head for a couple of months and kind of argue a few points of it. And then I'm looking for feedback. So I've actually made some notes for once. I rarely do that for videos, and the quality shows. And so let me go through some various kind of collectible asset classes, antique asset classes, and we're going to talk about a particular quality of each of them, and that is durability. Okay? Now, durability, I would say, is how well does the asset transport itself through time? Okay, let's take a very vague kind of philosophical definition. Another definition might be what are the odds of the thing still existing in the future in a state that is still collectible? And so let's start with things like jewelry, Rolexes, coins, stamps. Okay, I'll put all those in category together for durability. And the reason that I do that is that they're all supremely durable. Yes, your Rolex can break, right? We have repairers who will fix your Rolex. But yeah, you can scratch it up, if you have a really nice Rolex and you enjoy wearing it. And, it'll get scratched a little bit from time to time. Okay. But for the most part, it survives. The movement generally survives. And realistically, most Rolexes are kept in boxes. They're kept because they're kind of prized luxury items. And even if not, you can only wear one a day unless you're a weirdo with like 6 watches on your hands because you just captured Berlin. And coins and stamps are kind of the same way when it comes to collector's items. People aren't taking, say, proof versions of coins from a mint, cracking them out of the plastic case, and I don't know, what would you use coins for? Like Is there any game like flipping a coin when they're out playing soccer with their friends or something? I don't even know what sports ball does, but, they flip a coin from time to time. So, you're not going to take those very, very rare and expensive versions of a coin and go do something with it in the course of normal life, normal, sane, rational going about your day that will destroy the collectability and the antique value that that piece has. And the same way with stamps. If you're a stamp collector, you've probably got them in plastic sheets in a book. You flip through the pages once in a while and you enjoy looking at them, and that's not going to destroy them. And so these kind of assets, Rolexes, stamps and coins, and, maybe you put antique jewelry in there too, would be a good example. They're supremely durable because most of them are going to make it long into the future. Now, you can always have a house fire. And yeah, pretty much every antique is going to be destroyed by a house fire unless you're into collecting real meteorites. I don't know. I'm sure someone out there collects those as a, collectible hobby. Maybe those will survive your house fire well enough, depending on where they are, how hot it gets. So Rolex's coin stamps supremely durable, and the long-term supply of them generally goes up and up. And we'll have kind of a more specific argument about that point in a little bit, because that's important. There's kind of a fungibility argument to make. So the second group I'm going to talk about, I'll put antique furniture on there, okay? It's very durable, but it does kind of get damaged as you use it. Most people are not buying antique furniture simply to display it. I know some people, like your grandma had the room in her house you weren't allowed to go into because it had the really fancy furniture and like the couch had the plastic cover over it. But most people don't really have that. And most people who have antique furniture, they do want to use it in their home. They prize it because they feel like it's better built, or they like the style, or they like the time period it represents, or whatever. And so it gets used and it gets damaged in that, but it's also considered okay to repair it. And I guess I would put, if you have, to the extent that there exists some collectible guns, that would be in there too. Either a particular gun that's very rare, or a gun that has specific provable provenance. And so those are things that kind of can take some wear, and that's considered okay. Most people like to shoot guns, and so that puts wear on them, and it's also considered okay to send them to a gunsmith. Now, if you have one of Herman Goering's Lugers or his other handguns, you probably don't want to shoot that, the all gold-plated ones. So that's kind of the second category, where in terms of durability, it's got less durability, but still very high, and still it's considered okay to send them and be repaired. It doesn't, most of the time you don't think, oh, well, a piece of antique furniture, all its collectability is destroyed because, I sent it to a guy who used steam and an iron to get some dents out of it. People don't really think that way about it. So I'll go to a third class and we'll discuss the durability of it. And that would be game consoles and video games. And the thing about those, and I'm talking specifically sealed game consoles and video games. So those are durable too. Those have very high durability, but only because nobody goes around saying, man, I wish I had an original Super Nintendo system and F-Zero cartridge, and I wish I could open it and then play them. Nobody says that. Like, nobody dreams of opening an original 8-bit NES console for the fun of experiencing the opening and being like, oh yeah, look, this is what the warranty registration form looked like. Nobody's doing that. And if anybody wants to, play the old games, there's a really great emulators that really are better than the old games because they probably run at higher rates, and you can play them on, your modern TV, and they have save states and all kinds of code injection and things like that. They sometimes even have classic bugs fixed in them. And so there's nobody who's saying, oh, I have this 8-bit NES in its original box with its label from Kmart, and I'm going to open it. No, they keep it on their shelf in their office in their Nintendo shrine, So that's another type where you would think the durability may not be great, but the reality is there's not a lot of demand from people to go and destroy that original packaging and turn them into, oh, just another F-Zero cartridge that was opened at some point in the last 30 years. And then I'm going to talk about classic cars because I think this kind of gets pretty good on the other end of the spectrum. Classic cars have low durability. Now, if you have a classic car and you drive it regularly to enjoy it, then you have problems like, well, some guy could hit your car. You could crash your car, and that would severely compromise its collectability. Even if you never crash it and no one ever crashes into you, then you just put wear on it. At some point, you'll wear out major components like the engine or the transmission. Lesser components, not as big of a deal. You'll do a brake job, you'll fix the suspension, things like that. Not a big deal. But even if you don't drive the classic cars, let's say you own 4 classic cars, and so you have to have, an extra large garage onto your house. Well, you had to pay the money to get that extra large garage. Maybe you have a mortgage, and so you're paying that money for 30 years, and you're paying interest on that money, you're paying property tax on that, and you're paying insurance because it increases the replacement cost of your house. And then parts on a car will atrophy even if they are just show cars, static display cars. The tires will eventually rot. If you leave a car sitting in a garage for 30 years, you're going to come back, all the tires are going to be rotted out and flat. You may have flat spots on the rims. You may have rust, depending on the climate. You'll have a lot of rubber parts that are, specifically I'm thinking hoses, that are cracked and maybe compromised. You could have wiring insulation that's compromised and creates electrical issues. You might have had vermin who got into the car and chewed up the upholstery, right? And so classic cars, collectible cars, do take a reasonable amount of upkeep. So they'll have atrophy if they're sitting there, they'll have more if they're used, and so their durability is not great. Okay. So I've kind of established how you can take a bunch of different kinds of collectibles and antiques that are popular, and you can kind of talk your way through how they can have different types of durability. And so when it comes to sealed TCGs, and I'm going to mostly be thinking of Pokemon, sealed TCGs, they have supreme durability normally. If I take one of these boxes back here and I go throw it in my closet and I come back 30 years from now and I take it out of the closet, it's probably going to be in the same state it was before. Okay. Now, my house has air conditioning, which keeps the whole place at a constant temperature and humidity throughout the year forever. So I don't expect them to warp from humidity cycling. I don't expect them to anything else to happen to them. I don't live in a earthquake-prone area or a hurricane-prone area. We kind of have tornadoes rarely here. But by and large, outside of a force majeure, I expect that the box would still be in the same condition 30 years from now. Okay? But the difference in durability on sealed boxes, say specifically of Pokemon, is that it's considered perfectly acceptable to destroy them. And it's actually considered desirable to destroy them. And so while they do on their own have this supreme durability, they also have this vulnerability where a lot of people just want to open them. They want to open them to get at the cards inside, to have the experience of opening them, to draft or play with their friends, whatever. And that's the real difference, is you have a shrinking population because it's considered okay to open them. It's not like Nintendo consoles, original Sega Genesis consoles in the box from Kmart, where nobody ever really says, oh yeah, I just want to open that. Nobody says that. But when it comes to an old box of Pokemon, yeah, there are tons of people out there who do not care about the collectability. They've got a lot of money and they have a dream residing in their inner child that they want to satisfy by opening that box. And so they'll get the box, they'll pay for it. They don't care that it's $8,000. They just got a bonus from their law firm. So they'll go buy it and they'll open it with their friends while they sit around and drink beer one night. And that's considered perfectly acceptable. And that's the durability difference. Now, there is one thing that I'm still trying to wrap my head around and understand. And again, as I prefaced this with, I'm not completely married to this. This is something that's been coalescing in my head for many months now. And I've been trying to, again, understand why is it that Pokemon, and I kind of pick on Pokemon, but old Magic boxes are the same, but why Pokemon boxes are different fundamentally than other antiques and collectibles. Why, despite the yelling that this can't go on, markets weren't meant to be this way, it's all going to crash, whatever, it's just kept on trucking year after year after year. Now, the problem that I have is one of fungibility. And what I mean by this is fungibility is the idea that certain things are freely interchangeable with others without it being considered a substitution. And so if I had two different boxes of brilliant stars, they would be considered fungible compared to each other. And the question is a box of brilliant stars fungible to a box of battle styles? And I can obviously think of reasons why, and I can obviously think of reasons why not. And that's the real thing, because it also goes back to the argument about Rolexes and coins and stamps. And it would be that, well, if the old box of whatever black and white era Pokemon, some $2,000 box from then, if it's $2,000, why is a $180 box of brilliant stars not a substitute for it? And in some cases, it will be. Some buyers will consider it to be, and some buyers will consider that it's not. And it will vary. That's a personal choice. It's in the eye of the beholder. And so I'm trying to understand how that affects the situation. Does that mean that eventually Pokemon should come down to earth? Or is there a true difference between the boxes? And it kind of gets into the question of, what is the person collecting these for? Why is the person spending $2,000 on the box? Do they need to do it because that's the only gap in their shrine of Pokemon boxes in their office? Or are they just looking for something to open? In which case, if they just want to rip packs, go out and buy Scarlet and Violet for $95. And so maybe the answer is that we have to somehow try to quantify what percentage of the prospective collector market wants that specific box, that specific model of Rolex, that specific coin, that specific misprint stamp, and what other percentage of the prospective buyer market is simply looking for a collectible asset to invest in or something to add to their collection with not a lot of regard towards what specifically it is. Maybe they just love a certain type of coin, from some era, and they're just looking for more from that era. And if you offer them a $30 coin, they'll be just as happy with that as they would be with the $1,000 coin. So that's really the part that I'm still trying to kind of tease out in my head, coalesce some thoughts around that. And I've also started trying to think of this in terms of stock to flow modeling. I'm just at the very beginnings of that. So I guess if you have any particular kind of eureka ideas about stock to flow modeling on this, because again, that comes into durability. You can use stock to flow with commodity pricing, and durability of commodities is, it depends on the commodity, right? Wheat doesn't have great durability. Gold does, so it just kind of varies. Let me know what you think. Again, I'm not completely married to any of these ideas. I'm not thinking this is a hill to die on. I'm trying to explore the reason why some people can't see a difference between Pokemon and other antiques and collectibles and insist against the data, against the observation, against their own eyes, that Pokemon can't do what it's doing. I'm trying to understand how we can have a better discussion about that. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.